Shalom Israel. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakar Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel, who rule and teach well, to the Akims on the highways and byways pushing this word in truth and sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, I did a video on this about a month ago. I'm going to quickly touch it again and go over some other articles. It says, King County picks White Center site for quarantine site amid COVID-19 response. Then it says, people living in White Center are voicing concern after King County started setting up a temporary quarantine village for people with coronavirus in the middle of a neighborhood. It says the county started moving in trailers in the 200 block of Southwest 112th Street Tuesday afternoon. Now this article is going back a month ago, the 4th of March. And it says, I was watching the news and I said, that's across the street, said White Center resident Marsha Robbins. That's some scary stuff for me, and I'm a health freak because I'm 68 years old. Now, we're going to see where this neighborhood is that they were setting up this quarantine center. See whose neighborhood they were setting this up in. And this is over a month ago. Let me just make this ad finish. Oh, what's happened there now? Oh, Slakia Israel. This is gonna all skew with. What the hell is this? Oh, Salakia. Try to play this video now.
People are voicing concern after King County started setting up a temporary quarantine village for people with coronavirus in White Center. Now, we were there when the first trailer was moved into a lot on Southwest 112th Street today. Kamos Tammy Mutasa is live at the site where neighbors say they were not warned about this plan. Tammy?
Yeah, Mary, a lot of people told me they had no clue this was happening, and they think it's really unfair that this quarantine trailer was moved into their neighborhood, right in the middle of the neighborhood, without them knowing, and more of these trailers are expected at this very site.
I was watching the news. I said, there's one right across the street.
17 years living in this neighborhood, Marsha Robbins didn't see this coming. A trailer moving in across the street to house people who need to be isolated and recover from coronavirus. Air Force shows just how close the site is to apartments.
That's some scary stuff for me. And I'm a health freak, and I'm 68 years old.
Up to 8 trailers will be on the lot after a building is demolished first. But officials say initially they won't be hooked up to water or sewer. Sharon says White Center already has enough to worry about.
We got to pray on it every day just to live in White Center, period.
But she understands people need a place to go.
Now, what they've done, they've moved it into the black neighborhoods, without notifying any of the residents, and they were going to put up 8 of them. Now, like I said, this was a month ago. Now, this article here, this was just one site they were doing. Now, this article says King County sets up 4 new temporary quarantine centers for coronavirus. So it weren't just the one they did, they ended up doing some more. It says King County, Washington is setting up more modular buildings to serve as quarantine and isolation units for novel coronavirus cases. County Executive Dow Constantine announced in a news conference today that they now have 3 sites set aside for the buildings in the communities of White Center, Interbay and North Seattle. And this is what they're doing. They're putting it up amongst black neighborhoods. Says Constantine also confirmed they are moving forward with the purchase of a motel in Kent to use for quarantine, despite concerns from Kent community leaders. Constantine says they hope to have the motel operation within days. This situation requires us to act urgently, Constantine said. We all need to be in this together, but they're not putting none of these up in white communities. Now, like I said, this was a month ago I covered this. And then now, this is the 7th of April, so this article is today. Now, I'm not saying these are linked, but I wouldn't be surprised what scheme Esau has up his sleeves. It says coronavirus wreaks havoc in African American neighborhoods. So they were putting these cubicles up in African American neighborhoods. They were setting up 4 of them. And now, a month later, the news is reading. It says Stark's statistics from Chicago health officials have underscored the heavy toll of coronavirus on black Americans. Black Chicagoans, account for half of all coronavirus cases in the city and more than 70% of deaths, despite making up 30% of the population. So now this virus seems to be hitting our people very hard. It says other cities with large black populations, including Detroit, Milwaukee, New Orleans, and New York, have become coronavirus hotspots. And we don't even know if they've done anything like this in these areas, but it wouldn't really surprise me. But the fact that it's hitting our people the hardest, to me, that sort of seems strange. It says US has recorded nearly 370,000 virus cases and almost 11,000 deaths. Now, is that something that Esau would do? This is a video. This video is on a site called Newsy, but it's what they did in this video where it talks about, because like I showed, they're putting up these quarantine centers in black neighborhoods. He's talking about we're all in this together, but they're not putting it up in white neighborhoods. Then now you've got an article speaking about how we're being touched the highest with this coronavirus in our neighborhoods, yet still we make up a small percentage of the population. So let's see if that's something that Esau would do, if they've done anything similar in history.
What the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
And as we say, sorry can't buy soldier Larry.
We have no idea how many wives, girlfriends, children inherited the disease and also died or were forever crippled by its effects.
For 40 years, the U.S. government-operated Public Health Service conducted what was known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study.
And this went on for 40 years, people, yeah?
One of the darkest chapters in American history. Now, over 40 years after the study ended, we still don't know, and might never know, the full extent of its effects. And the study might have continued if not for a 1972 article from Associated Press reporter Jean Heller.
Everyone who knew about this, to my way of thinking, everyone who knew about this and didn't blow the whistle, that didn't shout to high heaven, "This is wrong," is culpable.
Syphilis was considered a national health crisis in the early 20th century.
You don't know a thing about syphilis, except that you've got it.
And many doctors at the time thought syphilis and other medical complications were affected by race. To study the disease, researchers found a population of poor, black, syphilitic sharecroppers in and around Tuskegee, Alabama during...
And this is something that Esau would do, get you ill, set you up with some kind of sickness just to study the effects.
the Great Depression. Nearly 400 of the participants had syphilis, while another 200, the control group, did not. In the end, as many as 100 men died from complications related to untreated syphilis, and the message was very clear. Black deaths mattered.
Medical doctors deliberately let them die, wanted them to die, for what they could discover from their bodies later.
How old were you when you first learned about the Tuskegee study?
23.
The day you published this story, the day the story was published. you know what was getting ready to happen.
Yeah. I knew it would be explosive.
So we can't really put anything past Esau. Like I said, they were setting up these quarantine centres in our neighbourhoods, and I don't know what other neighbourhoods they've done it in, but you know, what's to say they haven't done it in other neighbourhoods? They didn't tell no one they were going to do it in the first place. They just did it, and then they set up 4 of them, and now we have this article telling us that amongst our people, and you know, I've read a few articles, and what they're saying is because we're poor, you know, live in close-knit areas, etc. And that probably plays a part, but, you know, what's actually, it's not as if, for the most part, we as black people are dirty people, you know. For the most part, we are a clean race of people. So, you know, I wouldn't put it past Esau that they're conducting their experiment. Now, it's not just in the Americas. It says, this is another article by the Mail Online. And this article is, what's the date on this? Can I see the date on this? Today, 7th of April. So it says, it's like, yeah. Oh, what's wrong with these things, man? All these ads. Yeah, it says, coronavirus warnings for people. It says coronavirus warnings for people from black and minority backgrounds, as NHS data suggests they are at more risk of life-threatening complications. Now, I'm not saying they've been setting these things up in our neighbourhoods over here, but who knows what they've been doing, you know. They've had us on lockdown, and throughout the lockdown, they've been going around putting up these 5G towers whilst people's on lockdown. So what else have they been doing? It says, third of patients who fall critically ill in the UK are black, Asians or ethnic minority. That's despite minorities making up just 13% of the British population. Finding revealed in Intensive Care National Audit and Research Centre report. So it's not just happening in the Americas, it's happening over here as well. In the UK, it says coronavirus patients from black and ethnic minority backgrounds may be at higher risk of suffering deadly complications of the disease, an NHS report suggests. Despite making up just 13% of the UK population, a third of patients who fall critically ill with COVID-19 are from black, Asian or minority ethnic groups. It says, the report by the Intensive Care National Audit and Research Centre found 14% were Asian, 14% were black and 7% described themselves as other. The study of 2,000 MASH patients has raised fears non-white communities could suffer a disproportionate amount of deaths during the pandemic. It says members of ethnic communities are twice as likely to be affected by poverty and are often hit the hardest by disease. And these poverty areas that we live in, they're normally orchestrated anyway, you know. It says coronavirus patients from black and ethnic minority backgrounds may be at a higher risk of suffering deadly complications of the disease, an NHS report suggests. I think there's just one more bit I wanted out of this. Says those living in poverty smoke and drink alcohol more and are more likely to be obese, all of which increase the likelihood of chronic health conditions. Patients with pre-existing health trouble struggle to fight off COVID-19 before it causes deadly complications such as pneumonia. Poor people are also more likely to use public transport more often and live in crowded houses, driving up their chance of catching and spreading the virus. It says anecdotal evidence has also suggested that ethnic minorities are more likely to fall seriously ill with the coronavirus. So, you know, this virus seems to be hitting, you know, our people at a higher rate. But it's like with everything, we make up a small population, small percentage of the population, but we have a high rate in the prisons. Is that a coincidence? You know, so like I said, I wouldn't put anything past Esau. Says this is Black Country coronavirus death rate, now highest in UK. Now, Black Country, that goes into places like Birmingham, where we also have a high number of quote-unquote Black Caribbeans. Says the Black Country now has the highest coronavirus death rate of anywhere in the country, according to official NHS figures. It says COVID-19 related deaths have surged across the region over the past week, with the death rate in the Black Country and West Birmingham area currently standing at just under 5%, 5 per 100,000 people. It says the South West London Health and Care Partnership was next worst with just under 4 deaths per 100,000 population. Says, meanwhile, figures from Health Service Journal and Johns Hopkins University show the number of deaths from coronavirus in the Midlands is around 200 fewer than were recorded in Italy at the same stage of the pandemic. And this name here, Johns Hopkins University, we know that they're linked up with Bill Gates and other such foundations. And in a video I did recently covering Event Tour 1, they hosted a conference where they had numerous leaders to see how, and the conference was held in 2001, 2005, 2018, and the last one I came across was October 2019. And this conference was to see how we would manage, or how these world leaders or countries would manage if there was a pandemic outbreak. And lo and behold, what are we in now? A pandemic outbreak. So I'm not really surprised at some of the things that's happening now when you're seeing certain names keep popping up. But the fact of the matter is, whether Esau is behind all of this, planning and scheming, which we know he does, the long and short of the matter is, the scripture lets us know that man's goings are of the Lord. So regardless of what's ever happening, it all boils down to the Lord doing all of this. That's the long and short of the story. Now this is 2nd Ezra chapter 16, verse 19. It says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. So all these things, when we're seeing these stats among our people, these are sent for amendment. Yeah, it says, but for all these, like, we're meant to look at this, and repent, really. That's the long and short of it. But it says, but for all these things, they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. And that's one thing we know that our people won't do. Regardless of how many strokes the Lord lays on us, we won't repent from the wickedness that we're doing and turn back to the Lord. Now this is Revelation 16 and 9. It says, and men were scorched with great heat and blasphemed the name of the Most High, which has power over these plagues. And this is what we have to remember. These things are sent from the Lord, and He's the one who controls them and has power over them. It says, and they repented not to give Him glory. So just like we read in 2nd Esdras, these things are sent for scourges, for chastisement to our people. But with all this that's going on, we won't repent. But the long and short of it, at the end of the day, we know that 1/3 of our people will repent. 2/3 will not repent and will be judged for it. Now this is Zechariah chapter 13 verse 8. It says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die. Yeah, those are the ones who for all these things won't be mindful of their scourges. Those are the ones who will not repent to give the Most High glory. Yeah, so it says Zechariah 13 and 8, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the 3rd shall be left therein. Those are the ones that's going to repent, that's going to be mindful of the scourges, that's going to give the Lord glory. Those are going to be the ones that turn from their wicked ways and turn back to the Lord. Yeah, 1/3, the elect of Israel, says, and I will bring the third part through the fire, and we will find them as silver is refined, and would try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my power. So with all this that's going on, majority of our people ain't gonna take heed to what's happening and repent. You know, they won't turn back to the Lord. They won't give him glory. And what can I say? If you, as we say, if you can't hear, you will feel. And with that, I'm going to close out. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rekah Kadash, Kwame Asher Allah.